This month, we're going to bring you the chills, and not just because of the fall weather. It's Halloween month, and we went headfirst into horror. Picture it. You find your dream apartment, spacious rooms, balcony with a view, modern amenities, and a price you can't refuse. But there's one catch. It sits right next to you, a graveyard and crematorium. Would you still move in? You guessed it. Our October theme is spooky reads. Welcome back to Girl, What Did I Just Read, the podcast where we read books by women and queer authors that have us questioning everything from plot twists to our taste in fictional men. Welcome, Shaggy, again, and I'm Katie.
Hey. Firstly, Katie, I have to say, your sweatshirt is awesome. Yeah, your jumper, perfect fall weather vibes, perfect
Thank you.
Halloween vibes. And yeah, like seriously, your entire setup looks so together.
Thank you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And yes, I will have to say this to our viewers that this is Katie's birthday month. She's an
Thank you.
October child. So this time we went with
Yes.
what Katie wanted because it's her birthday month and she gets what she wants. And she wanted horror. And I was
Yep.
scared.
And I went easy on you, too.
And you went easy on me. But then I'm such a scaredy cat. I mean, literally, look at my t-shirt today. It has a literal scared cat. Okay, it has a grumpy cat. It has a grumpy cat, but deep inside, the cat is like really scared and really shivering. And it's putting up a facade of like not caring. But yeah, also talking about horror, I have worn this t-shirt. It says, I do not like morning people or morning or people. So I'm already introducing 3 horror concepts by my t-shirt alone.
I love it. Awesome.
But however, I do not hate morning people. I hate the audacity of morning people to go around creating a rumble in the household and not letting people sleep, not letting the night owls sleep. No, I don't hate mornings, but I do hate the noise that morning brings. Yeah. I think when people say, oh, I'm a night owl versus I'm a day person, I think night owls are all like, I just want silence. And morning people finish their audacity only by the time they are tired at night.
That's
so
true.
We need silence. And the last horror, I hate people. Well, look at the world around us. How many role models do we have?
I'll let you
So,
take it and introduce
now let's
our
come back
spooky
to the
read
book.
this month.
Yes, coming to our book. This is our 5th episode. Claps to us. I mean, we put in so much work into this. This is like a cottage industry, completely small business thing that we have going around over here. But I'm so glad that we are on to our 5th episode now. And since we chose horror, we dove into Mariko Koike's chilling novel called The Graveyard Apartment. Now, Katie already mentioned, and the book by its title itself, it's pretty obvious that here we are having what I call a house horror. Like you need a setup, you need a structure, you need infrastructure for haunting to take place. So I call these like house horrors. But this particular novel, it's originally written in Japanese. It was translated in 2016 into English. And this is a freaky story. It's so silently sinister. Like it'll get to you. It'll get to you in a way that you don't even realize that your brain is on full alert. It's the slow chill that creeps onto you and you're wondering, why am I feeling uncomfortable? But no, it's the oppressive atmosphere that I think Japanese horror is able to encapsulate very well. All right, now coming to the story, this particular book blurs the line between haunted horror house and domestic tragedy. We were already speaking about this, that I think Japanese horror is very tied to some kind of generational trauma or some kind of familial trauma, which causes, I would say, a paranormal entity to be malignant in nature. Mostly we call this in movies, Western movies, generally we see that there's a concept of unfinished business for paranormal entities being on the other side of the veil, that is the human world. So this, yeah, this book completely blew my mind, and I was so scared. I would watch an episode of Bob's Burger, then read a couple of chapters, then watch another episode of Bob's Burger, then read a couple of chapters, then watch Modern Family. So this is how, like, I was consuming a lot of light media to be able to, like, temper down a sense of dread that I was filled with this particular book. So this is a story of one family, one nuclear family, a couple and their kid. And it's about the family, but it's also about this apartment, this really swanky, as Katie described, great amenities, spacious, good square footage. They move into this building, and this building in itself is a character in this book. This building is firstly where the plot is driven, but the building plays a role almost as if it can interfere with their lives in malignant ways. The creeping sense of dread that like settled into me, oh my god, it was a perfect read for October. Like, absolutely the perfect read. I initially, what scared me about reading a horror novel, and I generally don't read like horror, there are enough horrors in, like, the human world. I don't need I don't need another category also haunting me and, like, giving me troubles. So what I'm scared about when it comes to horror novels is that I'll get jump scares, or I'll get gore, or I'll get some kind of, like, human harm, human injury, which is very apparent and which is very obvious in nature. But this was not a jump scare book. This was eerily terrifying, and then it pushed us into this haunting atmosphere, and that haunting atmosphere then became an oppressive, suffocating, just the kind of entrapment that humans feel when they don't know what's going on. And uncertainty is one of the biggest things that humans are scared of. I mean, that's the reason why horror even works, because uncertainty is, well, the name of human life, but uncertainty is also what drives horror, the genre of horror. I mean, think about all the Japanese horror movies that we have seen, which have been adapted into English movies, like The Ring, The Grudge. They create this sense of dread that a monster attacking a human cannot absolutely create that kind of dread.
So you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
like horror normally, right?
No.
Well, you were a trooper with this one. Like I said in the last episode when I teased it, I wanted to do spooky, I want to do paranormal because we were thinking like we were looking at Twilight kind of stuff and it's like, I don't want vampire werewolf because I don't want to get into another like romance thing. I want to
Yeah.
still wait a little bit longer. I'm still scarred from our first episode. But I wanted something spooky. We've been trying to pepper in international,
Yes.
not just focus on rich white people like we did last month. And so I knew you said no gore. Okay, cool. And thank you for going with this with me because I know it was harder for you to find, but it looked interesting. It looked spooky. It was my first time reading a Japanese author, which was interesting, and we'll get into that. But yeah, really, really atmospheric. And I know you were ahead of me and you were like, whoa, this is spooky. This is atmospheric. And so when I get into it, I was like, yeah, it really, really painted the picture. The author did a great job of that. I think the characters were well fleshed out, maybe a little too well fleshed out, but I didn't want to judge the writing because again, I mean, I've never read,
See, but
work.
at the end of the day, I also think a lot of things are lost in translation.
Mhm.
What we are seeing as atmospheric buildup might just be the normal way that Japanese language comes across. And for us reading it in English, it's like, I think that there is a possibility that there could be a disconnect between, and especially with a genre like horror, where you have to really establish things. Like, you have to establish what's happening, you have to establish that uncertainty, and so, in a way, I think, or I'm not, I kind of wonder how much of it we kind of just lose in the fact that a lot of nuances in some might be bypassed just because they can't be translated into English. But I am so glad that you actually chose a Japanese author, because I have kind of fallen off the wagon of reading translated works. I was really into Japanese literature like during college and stuff. And I was introduced to like original Japanese, like translated works in English by this author called Haruki Murakami. And he's a really big figure in Japanese writing. He's the one, he in a way was the one who popularized the idea of what kind of themes a Japanese author writing in Japanese can actually flesh out in a book. And of course, he became like popular with the masses. And that's how a lot of us got access to, like the world opened up for us as to like the fact that there are good literary works which are coming out of Japan, and we have absolutely no idea just because we don't have that much of translation work, and then books which are translated coming into the hands of like normal people who love reading. So I was really glad because, yeah, I touched base with the fact that I used to read Japanese authors and I used to really like this kind of work, which is very different from the Western norms of writing. And so, first, this is what drew me to the book, that, yeah, I'm going back to something that I used to like and I kind of just forgot about it and life came in the way, whatever. So, one was that. Two, obviously, I wanted to read something that I've not read in a very long time. And I think this podcast, in a way, works for me to like make me uncomfortable enough to want to get into a book which I would not normally like fly through. So, in a way, I think this podcast is rewiring my brain. It's making me do difficult things, like reading things that would ordinarily I would be like, nope, not in my comfort zone. I'm not reading
Yeah.
it.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it was
What's
great.
fun?
And actually, I didn't know till now that you used to be into Japanese books because, yeah, as you know, I've been extremely busy all of the last month, and I normally do a lot more research, and I didn't for this one because I'm really curious and you can speak to this as to what we'll talk about and maybe my I don't want to say gripes, but there were things where I'm like I don't know if I like this style of writing of this particular mode, but I think because it's Japanese and again it's translated, so you can speak to that more. So yeah, so we'll get into the characters. So we talked about Masao. I would say she's our protagonist. You know, we get in her brain the most. The author gets into everybody's heads. Some of them, like I said, I don't think she needed to, but we have a very short cast of characters. Masao is the wife. She's 32. By the way, they live in a suburb just outside of Tokyo. So the husband can take kind of a short train trip into Tokyo to go to work. The husband to pay. And again, you guys can totally come for us about the pronunciations because we don't know if we're pronouncing them correctly. But to pay, he's okay. He's 35. You know, he's got his wife now. He's got his beautiful daughter, Tamao. She's about 4 or 5 years old. She's about kindergarten age. You know, she's intelligent. She's kind of chill. She's very observant, you know, like
Mm.
most kids her age. At first, I mean, you know, it's about like from the onset, you learn it's a lot of the issues of the couple stem from Tepe's former wife.
Yeah.
So Masao and Tepe were coworkers, and it was like 7 or 8 years prior to this story. They had started an affair at work, and they were gallivanting off doing little hotel staycations and weekend getaways while
And
his
Japan
wife
has a lot of love hotels.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, he had a lot of fun with her. And we're getting into also Masao's view of this and also Tepe's view. We get what they're thinking about it and how Masao was so different than his wife. Almost like he was trying to rationalize why he was with this other woman, Masao. And he thought his former wife was just kind of like head in the clouds, didn't realize what was going on, but she obviously did know what was going on because all these late nights and these weekends away, she eventually figured it out. So he comes home one night after being with his mistress, Masao, and finds his wife. He thinks that she's standing in the dark hallway, and it's not. She'd hung herself. But she left a note. And in so many words, it was like, hey, I know what was up and I can't deal with this anymore. So I was like, whoa, this is, I mean, that's in the first chapter, the first few pages, right? It was a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like right from the start, you're kind of like slapped with family tragedies. I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of Japanese literature. They are very like matter of fact about horrible things happening in human life, because the human condition in itself is never going to be completely fulfilled, content, happy, or anything like that. And this is how, like, when you know things can happen for real, that's when things can get scary. And somehow this background story, in a way, I think the way I read it was that, like how I say, Japanese horror is tied to familial issues. Here again, while the death of the first wife is not explicitly connected with the paranormal and disturbing activities that start happening after the couple move into their new home, their new apartment, but the fact that somewhere this terrible, disturbing things that start happening to them somewhere have a root to a deep source of sadness and tragedy, which happened because of this by the first wife. And I think that in a way, this is the unfinished business, which this is the lingering unfinished business that I think carries the book. Like, there was a deep sense of saddened family tragedy that happened, and you think you have moved on, you think, the world has moved on, you have moved on, you have moved forward in life, and you think you have left behind something that was horrible and something that was dreadful. But what if you're still carrying it inside of you, but it manifests later on? I think
Mhm.
this is the way a tragedy is tied up with the horror in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So we start off with that, and then yeah, they need more space. There's three of them. They want to move outside of kind of the main part of Tokyo. They're in a little apartment, and then they find these. I would call them condos, honestly. How being in real estate, having been in real estate.
But Japanese real estate is a horrible, horrible scenario. They live in like these really tiny, 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 tiny houses. And
Yeah,
Japanese real estate is like, especially in around major cities like Tokyo, it's really financially horrible on people who need to just have space to live. Yeah, it's actually really bad. So the way they describe their apartment in this book, I thought that it was a pretty flashy apartment compared
did
to
you?
the
I was
kind
gonna
of.
say because I was like, wow, 900 square feet. That's not that big for like three people and two bedrooms. So yeah, what's your take on it?
So I would say, because of like just the geographical setup of Japan, real estate is like really, really, really difficult to. Good real estate is something that's very difficult to come across. They have like constant earthquakes in Japan. So they often don't build very large structures because the possibility of damage, the possibility of human casualty can be bigger, which is why they build like homes that are, easily rebuildable in a way. So the topography of Japan is such that real estate is in shortage. So when I read the fact that they had like, a spacious bedroom and a spacious balcony, I was like, Japanese standards, this is good.
Yeah,
And this is
Western
near
style.
Tokyo. Yeah, I was like, this
Hmm.
is near
Yeah.
Tokyo. These standards are amazing. I can understand why Tepe completely went into, probably eyes closed, disregarding the fact that there's a crematorium and a graveyard right
Hmm.
facing their own,
Balcony.
home. And I can
Hmm.
understand why he like completely disregarded this.
Yeah, it was a
In a
steal,
way,
and
I
it
can
wasn't.
draw a connection to India as well
Mhm.
here, because real estate is so expensive now for millennials, and the fact that getting able to buy a home is something that was considered like, a normal milestone of life for the boomers, Gen Xers, the silent generation. It is so difficult for right now for millennials, with inflation, with capitalism, with the corporate world being completely haywire. The fact that you're able to get a home, who cares if there's a graveyard? like outside your home. Like literally, who cares? And this apathy that I am saying is because India, 2 billion people. You know what? There are bigger human concerns
Yeah.
rather than bothering with people who have already like left this human purgatory hell that we live in. So in India in itself, we would like completely disregard this unless you're like a grandparent or a great grandparent who probably have some stories, something that they heard or maybe something that they like experienced in their own lives. But otherwise, like graveyard what? And okay, I'm also saying this from the perspective of the fact that I worked in real estate laws a couple of years ago. And what we would do is these large commercial developers, they would acquire, say, a huge piece of land to either build apartments or to build office spaces or just to build airports or the metro rail. They will acquire these huge land properties. And okay, at that point of time, I was like, it was the beginning of my career. So I was not fully in the know of how things work under the table. But I heard rumors, clear rumors of the fact that for a lot of commercial developers that we were representing, there was displacement of graveyards taking place. And I did not bat an eyelash. I was like, yeah, obviously, there's no space in India. If you're going to start like actually giving so much weightage to say a graveyard that's 100 years old, and again here the overlap with capitalism, you have to like make money out of things, and things that don't serve a purpose are erased altogether. So I have clearly heard rumors of shady things happening where large apartment buildings were built on graveyard land, not even facing graveyard land. So if you look at it, this is a more horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
Completely,
Wow.
completely eliminating a space that was like meant to be your final place of rest, that is being eliminated because we need to make money out of land. Land is like such an important commodity that determines so many things, inheritances. Yeah, and the fact that it's your own shelter, but so that's the thing. I don't think reading this book, I was like, there's a graveyard in front of your apartment. Good for you. At least you have a view. At least
You
you
have
have
a
trees.
900 square foot apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, your view has trees. It has greenery. It has, you're not looking immediately at the window of your neighbor. Like, your view of from your premium balcony is not cut off by, say, another building right in front of your face. So, actually speaking, the conditions of this Central Plaza mansion apartment that they move in, it's great. It's actually great.
Yeah. Well, also because, yeah, there were no obstructions because it was the only building around. And they could see far off on one side was the graveyard and crematorium. On the other side, it looked like abandoned homes. Like we're not right next to them, but there was a lot of greenery. But it was
Yeah.
weird because it was just their building only. And there were, what was it? So it was 8 stories high. There were the caretakers, I believe, were the only apartment on the bottom floor. So 7 other floors with only 2 apartments. So it wasn't huge. It's pretty, if you had to live in an apartment, that's pretty sweet. Because I mean, there are
Yeah,
people like
14 units. Pretty,
look at like tenement
very,
blocks. Yeah, look at tenement blocks in like New York City or like in London or in other places of the world where it's just like stacked. And I mean, I'm sure they're not very well built and you can hear everybody. I was complaining about my apartment neighbors earlier. So I mean, it was a steal and they didn't have a ton of money because the wife wasn't working anymore because she had to stay home with their child and so they could look past that. And of course, these are modern, they were, modern people, modern scientific people in their prime, and they said what 32 is the prime in the women's magazine that she was reading and that of that time. And I believe that, yeah, in the 80s, like you were at your prime in your early 30s. You know what I mean? um
that's because they didn't drink
Nowadays,
water.
yeah,
If they
exactly.
hydrated a little more.
Nowadays, yeah, 40 is the new 30s. Little odd things started happening, as with all horror movies, and it obviously gets to the wife first. She's kind of questioning it. And then the husband, just for the majority of the book, is just blowing it off. And he's poo-pooing the wife and
Yeah.
even making fun of her. But then they're hearing stories about the land. They're getting factual information about an abandoned project that was supposed to be, it was
These underground tunnels,
right
which were
20 or 30
supposed
years
to,
prior. Yeah, the
yeah,
city wanted to build these underground tunnels to make like an underground shopping mall. But the monastery that owned the graveyard was like, no, like we're not
yeah,
moving it. We're not moving. So they started to dig under, and then all of a sudden in like the 60s, the project just stopped and they filled in the hole. And that's part of this mystery. And that's, the protagonist, she's like digging into it once weird things start to happen, because everything starts to happen in the basement. They have a basement.
yeah.
Now, this is what I should have done. I wish I would have had time to research building standards in Japan. I'm sure they're different now, but even like, I know the States, we probably have stricter building standards than maybe some other countries. But Japan is a pretty developed nation by this point. How in the hell do you have, okay, they have one elevator. Okay, there's not many units, fine. If the elevator breaks, there are emergency stairwells. But originally, there are emergency stairwells. You have to have a key to use them. They're not just
Yeah,
open. But then there's no stairs to the basement. And maybe it was just for the story, but I would love to know, like, was this a violation of like building code? Because the only way down to
definitely.
this creepy basement was this elevator. So if the elevator breaks down, which it does mysteriously a few times, there's no way to get out if you're down there, or to get down there if you need to get down
Yeah.
there. It was just really weird to me. But obviously,
And
being the
sometimes
basement,
I wonder if the whole the basement concept. I wonder if a basement is generally introduced to reflect what is the unconscious human mind, like how dark the unconscious, subconscious human mind can actually be. And maybe a basement like subconscious space, maybe it does feel like, maybe the way the subconscious and unconscious can be dark, in the way this story shows that you can only use the elevator and there are like no other escape routes. I think this is reflective of the fact that humans have a lot of darkness inside them, and when they kind of open the door of unresolved issues, unresolved trauma, maybe when they open the door, there is not that many escape routes available. Maybe
oh,
there
that is
are not
good.
there are no emergency staircases available. It's like
Uh-huh.
taking an elevator, and if you let these unresolved traumas, issues get to you, then you're trapped in that darkness. But again, coming to basement, India doesn't have basements.
You don't have basements?
No. No, my friends and I would actually laugh at horror movies, like American horror movies. We are like, where is the basement? Where are you
I've never had a basement. Where I've never lived in a house with a basement.
Yeah, so it's like, where's the basement? Where's the real estate for to even have a basement?
Yeah. And have free storage. So they have like these free storage lockers, free
Exactly.
storage areas for their stuff, which is described. Misao gets, I guess, pulled down there she makes a neighbor friend who has a daughter, her daughter's age, and they get to be friendly. And so the neighbor brings her down there. Because I think Miss Sally didn't even notice that, she didn't even know that there was free storage included. And, Miss Sal's like creeped out. She's like, don't you find this basement's weird? And lady's like, no, there's just some old stuff and dust and, whatever. And then like she lets her kids play down there. That was too much for me. Even if it wasn't creepy, they let their kids, and Misao didn't, but when there was the one point, and maybe this is just me as a mom, there's one point where Misao lets the daughter, she's having the neighbor like babysit, watch, Misao's daughter and Tamao, and the neighbor has her young daughter and then a son who's a little older. So those three kids go down to the basement by themselves. Again, a basement where there's only an elevator to get there, and just messing around. And then obviously mysteriously Tamao gets, her knee sliced and there's like blood everywhere. That was the only gore, I think, in the whole thing.
Mm,
And, I was like, what the hell? Like, why would you let your kid? And at that point, the elevator mysteriously doesn't work. So the moms can't get down there. When
yeah.
the little boy runs up and says, hey, Miss Al's hurt. And then the elevator's stuck. Yeah. But I really liked your analogy. Yeah, that was really good. I didn't think about that being like the basement of the human psyche. And the skeletons in the closet. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, this building has a lot of weird stuff going on, and it starts in the basement, and then I think it gradually spookiness like rises. And my theory is, and because we can go more into the characters if you want to, but I mean, y'all should read this book. I think it's interesting. My theory with this in terms of the paranormal is that having, more people come down there, because it wasn't that old of a building. It was about a year or so old when they moved in. And it was only half full when they moved in before everybody that was in there started moving out for, mysterious reasons or just didn't like the vibe. I think it was feeding off the people. And then when the kids were down there and Tamal was hurt, like that blood sacrifice, I think that's also why it latched onto this family. Because I was first, why is the apartment building, as we go on and more people move out for whatever reasons, you get to see, like, once you're getting to the last few tenants, last few families, the doors aren't opening. They're not letting people, it's not letting people leave. And
Yeah.
then it does
Weird
not
things start
want.
happening. Lights
Yeah.
are flickering, pets are dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. That was the other thing. The bird died. We forgot to say they have a pet parakeet or something. And in the beginning, that's the first death.
Yeah.
Is mysteriously they move in overnight, their first night. The next morning, the bird is mysteriously dead, and there's like feathers everywhere. It's like something got to it, but it looked like she said like an animal got to it, but the cage wasn't open. And then to top it off, the little girl is like, "Yeah, the dead bird visits me at night, flies around, and it tells me things, and it tells me there's these people trapped in there, like these black shadowy figures, and they don't like it here, Mom." And it's like, oh God, like kids, you know what I mean?
Oh my God. The scary things that.
The kids. And so it has that too. It's got creepy basement. It's got a kid saying creepy things. It's got dogs freaking out because the animals they say can sense that. I mean, this book has it all. She just hit like it's got the of the wife and like kind of we're not gonna say the former wife. She's haunting them, and because
She
like
is
they're
haunting them because,
because they're
like I said, the
so feel so
darkness that
guilty.
is the darkness that is represented by the basement, and how you say that Tamao slicing her knee open was kind of it was almost like an offering that
Mhm.
pulled in these malignant spirits and they latched onto her. But I think before all of this happened, there was already a horror story which was latched on to this family, and that was the horror of the first wife committing. I think that horror which they were carrying with themselves, this heavy weight of how their actions had led to like terrible consequences. I think that with life like just distracting you, I think they did not resolve or did not come to terms with what actually happened and how much. I mean, they might mention how their actions like led to these things, but really coming into terms with this grief and loss, I don't think they did that. And in a way, this horror which was already latched onto them, I think it started just manifesting later on. It's like how I
Yeah.
think it's how I would say like a mental breakdown is. You take in so much stress, you take in, and you carry it with you. You carry this heavy burden with you, and one day you explode. One day, all of that stress, the difficulties of just living a human life, when that gets to you, and then when the explosion happens, that is the manifestation of everything that was unhealthy, everything that
Mhm.
was toxic. And I think this is the main blow up that happens in the book, where horrible things start happening to these people. It's just a manifestation of this lingering horror that they never came to terms with. And now they're seeing it in a different light. It's almost like a world is being created. It's almost like a setup is being created, but the real setup is within the characters actually coming to terms with what they did and how their actions may not just affect someone's human life, but maybe it has ramifications in the other world, in beyond the veil. Like, who knows how those consequences had a butterfly effect even in the paranormal world.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, they say, like, I'm very much into paranormal stuff, real spooky stuff. And I feel like, so the building was haunted regardless. And there was already this underlying feel of something's wrong. And like, there was the older gentleman that was into meditation and things like that. He kind of like, at the one point when Masao was trapped down and bleeding out in the basement and the elevator didn't work, he came along and like whispered to it and it started to work. And he was moving out and he had told the couple, hey, I know you might not believe me, but I'm very sensitive to these things and there's something here and it's not good. And this is why I'm leaving. I can't. And he goes, I feel like that's why other people are leaving as well, whether they realize it or not. So it was already haunted. However, this couple brought their own ghosts. And I feel like the
Yes.
spirits especially latched onto them because of that. So what happens, they say, is people that are like depressed, people that even like they say people that are like inebriated, that your energetic, your spiritual guard is down whether you know it or not. And so those type of people are the ones to get like spirit attachments. Like
Okay.
spirits will latch onto them, feeding off of this, that's why
Feeding off
there
of their
are
low vibrational
yeah.
energy,
That's why there
something
are
like that.
mediums, like there are psychics and mediums and ghost hunters that they either won't drink alcohol at all in their lives because of this, or they will not drink alcohol like before they go on a ghost hunt or they do a reading for
Mm.
someone else because it lowers your vibration. If you believe in this, I'm not saying, but these are the stories, but it lowers your vibrations. And so it can lead to like an attachment, like spirit attaching to you, or something that because an attachment's just the beginning, right? And if you want to
Yeah.
think of like movies like The Exorcist and The Conjuring, if you believe in demons and demonic things, then you get into the next step is spirit oppression, spirit or demonic oppression, and then it's possession. So it goes attachment, oppression, possession, and this couple, their vibes were already low because they've even said like there wasn't a day that didn't go by that either of them didn't think about the guilt they had for the
Yeah.
former wife taking her life because of them. So that's kind of my theory on that. And then the blood sacrifice. But poor Tamao, like the little girl, she was just an innocent little thing.
Collateral damage. Collateral
Yeah,
damage to adult actions.
yeah, and that sucks because she was an innocent soul. They felt so much guilt, especially Misao, the wife, that she kept one of their cultural things that she kept onto was having like a shrine because some
Yeah.
cultures, especially like Buddhists, have and actually all kinds. Like I mean, in Hispanic culture too, they have ofrendas, having shrines to passed on loved ones, and Tepe's current wife, who was his affair partner, is the one that has this shrine. She keeps it hidden in their house for the former wife to kind of, keep her spirit alive. Religion, some beliefs, they think that as long as you are looking at the pictures, as long as you're thinking about them, or like in Judaism, as long as you're like saying their name is being said, they'll be kept around. Not that their spirit's going to be stuck here, but that they won't be in some kind of purgatory. And I mean, I'm just generalizing here totally. And I mean, and that's why some cultures, they passed on loved ones, they will use their names as their children's first and middle names. So that way their names are always being said. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, this happens in Indian culture as well, like having middle names or like having your grandparents' name onto like grandsons and grandchildren. I think this is prevalent worldwide. Also, the human need to be remembered. I feel like that is more that is something that plays into this. The fact that like humans just don't want to be forgotten,
Yeah, you're
as
right.
if
Absolutely.
their life was valueless if it's not acknowledged by people.
That's the greatest fear. Because they talked about the ex-wife so much, but then also they did bring up this shrine. And then even when stuff's going down later on, and spoiler, they're the last family to move out of this and they're stuck. This place won't let them out. That what's her face? Misao, she has the shrine kind of like wrapped up, and then I guess mysteriously like part of it got unwrapped and she was like, what did this? I thought that the former wife was going to come in and like save them.
Mm.
That's what I wish would have happened because they she was brought up so much in the shrine. So I was like, oh, it would be cool if she kind of, busted up the bad ghosts and like got them. So that's one of the few things that I wish were different. But otherwise, like I appreciate it now after having read it, even though, like I said, the dialogue was super simplistic and we got into their heads too much. The only thing I would have cut is I think it felt long. It felt long in the middle, right before the last third. I think they could have cut out a lot more because then you get into the last third of it and it was like a horror movie. It was really interesting. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I can't put this down. Like I couldn't because I have to do this podcast, but casting for the show, I was trying to cast it in my mind and I kept thinking like, oh, I don't know how I would do this to screen, how I would portray this and to try to portray all these folks' inner thoughts and having such limited dialogue. It reminded me of Twilight. That was one of my problems with Twilight and Hunger Games is because the books are
And
better
Midnight Sun.
yes, Midnight Sun, because it's so much of their inner dialogue. And then that's why when you're watching like Bella on screen and she seems like, nothing's going on, it's because it's all in here. If you read the books, you would get that. And same with Hunger Games. Like I had to stop watching the movies and finish reading the books because you get so much more into Katniss's world. And what I was thinking actually, and kind of jumping around here, that it would make a really good horror film. I was thinking, how would you do it? But do you know what? It would be really good as an anime because an anime
Oh my God,
all
anime
the
can
time
terrify
have
you.
the inner dialogue. It's not uncommon for them. And it's not uncommon for them to have like these scenes where they jump back in time. You did it with the live action film. If you did it too much, like having too much back and forth, it would be too much.
The
But
kind of
you can
creative
totally,
liberty you can take with animation, you just can't
yes.
do it with live action. You
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
can't. Like
Yeah.
K-pop Demon Hunters, live action, I would have been like, fine, cool movie. But
Yeah.
K-pop Demon Hunters, the way we saw it, whoa.
I mean, it was so nuanced. It was like, you brought up some other points I didn't even think about.
What pissed me off a lot about this book was specifically about Tepe. I think because he was the primary breadwinner, somehow his decision making was put on a pedestal over Misao's intuition. It was almost as if her say in the decision making process of a household was lesser because she
Mhm.
was not earning money. And it was lesser because you can use feminine words like intuition and empathy and being sensitive. It's almost like things that would have helped them were pushed under the rug, and practicality and scientific logic and empirical research, whatever you want to call it, which cannot touch on these subjects because these subjects are just outside the bounds of science. It almost felt like this is what bothered me about the book, and this is what the horror of patriarchy is Misao had to be entrapped in a situation because her decision making was not, the weight given to her decision making was not on par with the breadwinner of the family. So this horror of entrapment, this is why women work, okay? I don't care. Work. Like make any, like even if it's a part-time thing, even if you're volunteering, like volunteer so that at least you can have a connection, make networks and somehow be able to monetize on that. But like do something which this unequal world considers more important than what has been like pushed under the rug, which is, women's emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual labor that they put in, and how that is disregarded, and how their decision making, because this is their domain, is somehow put lesser than the person who is logically earning money.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I
why
was
I had
like,
to get it. I know it pissed me off a lot, but I had to get it out of my head because, again, right when I started reading it, we were reading about, Miss doing everything with unpacking and taking care of the kid. I had to remember, right, it's 1986 because in every chapter of the book, it told you what day it was and the year. And it's like, okay, we get it. It's 1986. And by the way, they started the book in Pisces season. And I want to say they ended the book in Cancer or Leo season. So it's just very interesting. And Pisces is very like intuitive,
yeah.
season. So I noticed that.
I
But I know I
when
had
we
to,
come to the astrology, when we come to the astrology section, I have lots of Piscean and Gemini placements to give to people.
Oh, good.
to
Yay,
give to
yay, yay,
these
yay.
characters.
Yeah, and yeah, that'll be one of our bonus videos, y'all. So after this episode comes out, a couple days or a week after, I like to release extras videos that are 5-10 minutes long of things we cut, and so Shaggy always does a great job of guessing the astrology signs for all of the characters. So yeah, it was really good, but yeah, I didn't want to go too heavy, and you don't like spooky, and so I appreciate you like reading something spooky. So I think this was a good mix for things that we hadn't read before, like a style of writing I hadn't read before, and a genre that you usually don't read. This was, I think, my issue, but then I realized getting more into the book that this was the style. Super, super descriptive. Like, we're talking these people's inner world and inner dialogue was so descriptive. Sometimes too much for me. That's my thing with books. I don't care for overly descriptive. I don't give a crap like what the caretakers that lived on the first floor of this apartment building. I didn't care about their past and some of their things. I thought it was too much. Thought it was superfluous. I thought talking about the dog and things like that. But I did like that especially for the main characters, we really got into their inner world. But then the dialogue was super simple. That's what threw me off.
Yeah.
It was like so I watch anime, especially like Studio Ghibli, and Miyazaki. My daughter loves those. The dialogue reminded me of watching those, and I'm not going to say those aren't kids films, but the dialogue was so simplistic. And I'm going to ask you this: is it that's their style of writing, or that's just their style of like speaking? And or B, this novel was written in 1986. I know that was only about almost 40 years ago, but I feel like the Japanese tend to be a lot more conservative than we are, in their speech and like how they, I
Very.
guess, they present themselves day to day. Maybe, and even 40 plus years ago, they were still probably a lot more conservative than they are now. So anyway, I'll let you take
Yeah.
that. It's a lot. So yeah.
No, I can understand the issues that you had with this particular book because, yes, outward dialogues are very simplistic in Japanese books. Not just horror, like just take drama, romance, any kind of genre. What people say is very direct, terse, and to the point. But where the story is like behind the surface. The actual story emanates from the fact that more than what's going on in the outside world and more than how we present ourselves on the outside, the real horrors are in the human condition. The real horrors come from the human nature, which
The psyche.
again makes us afraid of uncertainty. So, what Japanese authors do is, yes, they flesh out their characters like brilliantly. A little too much, I will agree. And they are
Mhm.
descriptive. And I think the description is more to build the atmosphere. Because if you see, really, Japanese books are not like thick, chunker door stoppers. Like even this one, it was like around 300 pages. And 300 pages is technically considered a little bit more than what a typical Japanese book would be. So I think maybe this book went on a little longer, but again, 1988 standards were different. The kind audiences maybe did not expect hard hitting plot lines, like one thing happening after another after another. I think Japanese horror is like tied to the horrors of being human. If we see a lot of the in this book in itself, before we can even have supernatural entities and paranormal entities starting to like really interfere with the lives of the characters, before that itself we see so many horrors. Within the first chapter, I learned that this book is talking about the horrors of capitalism. It is talking about the horrors of what isolation can do to humans. It is talking about the horror of patriarchy. I mean, I started off the book, and in this particular book, the characters they move into this new apartment, and I saw the wife. Her name is, oh God, one second.
Nisao?
Her name is Misao. Misao has the entire burden of setting up the entire house. She has like
I
a
noticed that
huge
too.
checklist. Okay, this book also
Pissed me
introduces
off
us to
so
the horror
bad.
of moving.
Well, but the
The
horror
horror
moving, but
of
the feminist
moving.
in
Oh
me
my
was like
God.
so pissed. And I'll take this in a second. But then I had to remember it was written in like 86, 87, 88. So, and again, much more conservative society even than we are. So,
Yeah, so I was like, oh my God, before I can even start becoming scared of like things that are going to happen in the book, I'm stressed out for Misao having to like set up her place and settle down. And the fact that she's the one who has the checklist in her mind. I mean, her husband is a typical salary man. You provide, you help around a little bit in your own household, and you're like, because breadwinner versus the one who takes care of the household. But yeah, before I could start getting scared of like actual things in this book threw horrors on my face.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, she's the main caregiver to their young daughter because the daughter hadn't
Yes,
started kindergarten yet.
exactly.
So she's setting everything up while the husband's like working or doing whatever, having to watch the kid. I mean, the kid's like what, 4 or 5. So she's old enough to like kind of watch herself, but still it's a lot. I mean, like I said, I've got an almost 10-year-old and I couldn't get stuff done the last couple days, just because I had her and it's but I had to bite my tongue and not I wasn't gonna bring it up. So I'm glad you did because I think I'm always the one that gets like super feminist. But yeah, it did. It brought up like, the dynamics in their relationship. Though as it went on, I did like him a little better. As their situation gets a little more dire, he does end up kind of like becoming a little more empathetic and appreciative of her. And I think too, there were things where he'd mentioned where she saved him, emotionally and physically. Also, actually, I'm going to put this at the beginning and I'll put it in the description, but we do have trigger warnings for this. I didn't realize it was going to deal with
Yeah.
such big issues like that's one of the main themes. It's one of the main things that actually brought the two characters together pretty much. Well, their affair and then, the subsequent the guy's actual first wife taking her own life when she finds out. So yeah, it was just really heavy. And it was so funny because you said, oh, I just want a book where we don't have to think, we don't have to research. And I said, this is going to be it. And then, we get into the first couple chapters and I was like, oh, crap. And I texted you, I said, I'm so sorry. Like it's deep. It was a bit emo, especially like the first third, the first
Yeah.
half,
Japanese books are emo. Number one, I will have to tell you, if you're in the character's mind, you're going to be full emo throughout the book. You're going to be like, you're going to be washed in the tsunami of their emotions, their thoughts, their intrusive thoughts, their productive thoughts, like everything. And if the human mind is messed up, like, and you're reading about that, like that in itself creates like so much uneasiness. And that is what I think Japanese literature hits on. It shows how uneasiness and tragedy in human life mimics what we see as paranormal activity. And that is what makes it scary, that we create the horror by being humans, by creating concepts like, say, capitalism or patriarchy or like the horrors of financial constraint. I mean, one of the main themes of this book is how financially tied people are to their property, and you can't just run because there's a ghost. Like, I know I used to see movies like, say, The Conjuring, or what was that really scary book? Was it this movie,
paranormal
Paranormal
activity.
Activity?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would watch these movies and I'm like, why are these people not moving out? Like, why don't they go stay with a friend or a relative? Because one, capitalism is not like really helping us build support systems. It's making us individualized so much that we don't have support systems around us. And one of the biggest horrors of being human is being alone. So, I mean, yeah, this book will mess with your head mainly. And it'll
Yeah.
mess with your head because you will understand that before being scared of paranormal entities, there are so many things to scare you in life as it is. But now in the 21st century, the nuclear family setup that we have, the high regard for individualism and low regard for collectivism, that was something that I did not understand as a kid. And I did not understand as a kid that you can't just like move around places. You need like to buy the property. That takes so much time. Like transactions to actually go through, real estate transactions, or even to get a lease or a rental setup. It takes time. You can't just move around. And if you don't have a support system around you, if you don't have friends who are like, come move in with us for some time, Because how long is, like, say, a middle class family, an upper middle class family, how long are they supposed to sustain themselves in hotels and motels while everything that is tied to their life materially, they are afraid of it? The very comfort that their shelter is supposed to provide is giving them the deepest sense of discomfort, also to the extent of even harming them mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So now this book finally like lodged it into my head that you can't escape that easily. You can't escape these situations so easily. And generalizing them by saying that why didn't this family move out? Why did they endure so much dread? And for what? But the problem is, yeah, like I said, capitalism, you can't just move around.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, it's so interesting how, well, if I encourage any viewers, if you have not listened to our last episode, yeah, in episode 4, we covered The Buccaneers by Edith Wharton, which takes place in the American Gilded Age and Industrial Revolution. We delve way into like the history of basically capitalism because of that time. So it's so interesting how quickly capitalism really, I mean, started in the late 1800s in the United States. Quickly, it spread to the rest of the world because look, even in this novel, in the mid late 80s in Japan, it's in the middle of Tokyo. You know, they're. I mean, it's a major city, but how they're already deep into capitalism, and you know, that's why I was surprised too reading it. I thought it was going to be a little more. I thought they were going to be a little more in like their traditional styles of homes. Like even they talk about this brand new apartment that they buy next to the graveyard, how it's Western style.
Yeah.
So it's so amazing how in less than 100 years, how much Western like civilization and ways of doing things in capitalism has like overtaken the globe.
Also, I think Japan got that boom in its economy after the Second World War when they actually started rebuilding, capitalizing, recapitalizing. And I think there was a lot of absorption of Western ways of living, Western standards of living. And that slowly emulated into the infrastructure. It so slowly emulated itself into the professional lives or personal lives of human beings. But yeah, I can't imagine a more terrifying situation than my shelter not providing me shelter in the right sense of the word. Like that is probably the most horrifying setup ever in my mind. I mean, for me, like I said, even the fact that they were moving into a new place, that was giving me so much stress because moving in itself is such a stressful process. You're uprooting yourself and then you're trying to set up roots somewhere else, and your things are all over the place. Your brain is all over the place. You have a huge checklist. And yeah, over here for me, right in the first chapter, I was horrified by the emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual labor that Misao had to undertake as the wife, the nurturer, the caretaker. And also, this emotional and mental and physical labor that is considered like feminine in nature or considered under the domain of females. This kind of work, how unappreciated or rather how unacknowledged it is. And this is the kind of thing that keeps scaring me, that no matter which part of the world I read literature from, this is the same, like, this is the same kind of theme that comes up again and again and again and again. So yeah, I was like, and I had forgotten how much the conservative nature of Japanese comes across with a Japanese author writing in Japanese. And it comes across that in itself, the oppression that being conservative creates, that in itself is such a big horror. So yeah, this book was like crazy. Okay, so I think towards the end of this book, when, the actual oppressive dark atmosphere is created where it's like they're not able to get out, elevators stop functioning, amenities stop working, and it's like they are stuck over there. I don't know why. I have a big prediction that this family died and there are spirits lingering in that apartment and they have not come to terms with the, yeah, and because they have not come to terms with the fact that they are dead, like their spirit, their soul, or whatever is the energy, it has not come to terms with the fact that they are dead. And that's why they are moving around in a place which is familiar to them. But because they are not human, human amenities are not working for them as spirits. Or
Oh,
it's like even if, say, they are a lingering spirit, even a lingering spirit can create conditions. I think it's almost like they are so unaware of what has happened to them that they are unconsciously also creating scenarios where they will be left trapped.
yeah,
Which is why,
yeah.
as a spirit, they are not able to have a functioning elevator because they are not human enough to even be able to step out of the apartment. And you know what? I think Tepe, both of the entire family. That's my prediction.
Really?
Financial
Jesus,
constraint.
that's dark.
Yeah. No, it's also dark because Japan is like a huge problem, and it's a huge
Mhm.
problem because of working culture, because of like this oppressive hierarchy that you are in professionally, then that impacts personal life. There's also a region somewhere in Japan, it's a forest where
Mhm.
people actually go to commit, and there
This
there are
forest, yeah.
movies based on this. There are movies based on this forest. So I think, one, the guilt of his past; two, the difficulty of living in his human life, especially when it came to finances, when it came to material stability, that, and compounded with the stress of having a new family and being relatively young. I mean, 35 is not that old. So I think these three pressures might have, in a way, made Tepe, his entire family, and himself. And I think because he might have done this dark thing when he was in a low vibrational space, like say he was depressed, or he in a way, maybe as a man, he never even came to terms with the emotions that surfaced in him after his first wife's death. Maybe as a typical salary
Mhm.
man in Japan, living in the patriarchal world, he just suppressed all of those emotions. And maybe one day it exploded, and it exploded in the way where he might have thought that, one, he's not good enough in order to be able to protect his family. Two, he's also done horrible enough things to carry that shame and guilt. I think he killed them in the end. And because he killed them, Misao and the daughter, they have not come to terms with their death, because I think they did not face it head on. I think he might have killed them in their sleep, for all I know.
Jesus.
Like, wild, I know I'm
Yeah.
making wild predictions, but this
Yeah.
book
No,
makes
but I
you
see that.
make wild predictions.
Mhm.
And I think in some ways also the spirit of the first wife in a way teamed up with the malignant spirits of the graveyard. Because if humans can get together for a cause, why can't spirits get together for a cause?
Yep. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
why
No, I mean,
not?
I like this theory now that you're fleshing it out more. Okay, because two things now to support this. Number one, when he was at that bar after work with his brother and that really boring tiny bar, and there was that like old weird guy that wanted to sing karaoke, and Taipei was like, "Yeah, I'll sing a song," and he was singing like a song from the '60s, and when he was done singing, the old man made a comment like, "Wow, that song, every man I've ever heard sing that, they died sometime, like, after." As in,
Yeah.
like, sometime soon. He goes, "Yeah, that," and the
Yeah.
Entipei is like, "Whatever." And the guy's like, "Yeah, the last 3 guys I know that sang that song ended up dead." And so I thought he was gonna die in the thing, in the book. But then also another kind of hole that the author leaves, and maybe she did this to leave it up to our imaginations because I just now remembered it, was when he was still in disbelief about the basement being creepy and he's trying to figure out how his daughter was cut. So he goes down with the 2 caretakers and the elevator doesn't work and they can't leave and the lights go out and they have this like the creepy wind, the cold breeze coming in from they don't know where. And it said like, he was beaten over the head and he blacked
Yeah.
out. We don't know if they died or he blacked out. So it could have been that something possessed him and then he his family,
That
like
could
when
be
he got
also
knocked out.
possible. Yeah.
Because
That
that's another okay,
possession
so also yeah.
So I'm saying that possession could have been a demonic possession in the sense that we understand how ghosts work. I think it could also be a possession of his mental state changing. Maybe the fact that these horrible things had happened to him and also because of him, I think there's always a trigger that sets off certain actions. I think we could call it demonic, or again, we could call it the horrors of the human mind.
Hmm.
Maybe that particular incident of what happened in the basement, something triggered Tepe to not be himself.
Yeah.
And we can justify this by calling it as a demonic possession, or we can call it as
Or just
chemical
spirit possession.
chemical misfiring in the brain. Yeah. So
It could be either or. It's like Amityville Horror. Have you ever seen the Amityville Horror,
yes, I
not the
have.
Ryan Reynolds version? You got to see the original. You got to see the one from the 70s.
In a way, I think that I could justify this by saying that all narration in a book is not reliable. I think we are dealing with this almost like a third person unreliable narrator as to what is really happening. And that the fact that this entire narration of the story is so ambiguous and open ended, in a way, that makes me question that the things that are being acknowledged in the story, did they even happen? Did a
Yeah.
lot of things even happen? Or
Yeah.
were they figments of their spirit imagination or figments of their human imagination? Whoa. It was a
Yeah.
recipe for disaster.
But
This
wish that the author would have leaned into some of those theories more. You know what I mean? Like that's the
But
only like
that's
the
the
author could
thing
have done
with
so
Japanese
much more with
horror.
this.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the thing with Japanese literature. Abstraction is a huge concept for them. That's because if if you say firstly there's slow pacing and there's a lot of character monologue, inner monologue going on, and I think firstly Japanese literature tries to show you that human life is not very linear in nature. Like events don't happen one after another.
Mhm.
Maybe they're cyclical in nature, the way events happen. Maybe there's not a past and a present and a future. It's not linear the way we think it is. So, in a way, and also this is an Eastern concept that life is cyclical. It's not linear in nature. It's like one thing doesn't happen after another. Maybe all things are happening at once. And us, from our human perspective, we are only able to see one part of the larger picture. So, I think, in a way, a lot of the events that happened, maybe they are not so chronological in nature. The way a Western reader like myself would think, like how I would typically like think that, the way a novel is being written, it is chronological, like from start to end. It's based on timelines and years. I think in a way, even the mentioning dates so much in this book, in a way, that threw us off also. That in a way threw us off from understanding that what is being told to us is not the whole truth.
You mean because well, and for you listening, it's that they had the date, and then later towards the end, they had the date and time at the beginning of every single chapter. So,
Yeah.
was that the characters' dates, the dates that the
Yes.
characters were
I think
experiencing?
I think it
Got it.
was their experience, but maybe it was not what was realistically, chronologically, and in a linear manner what was going on. And also spirits, if like malignant spirits or spirits that have unfinished business, if things are recurring, like how you explained the Anne Boleyn story, what if this is also a cycle that's going on? It's like a tape recorder that never shut, that
Hmm.
never stopped playing.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
I like
that is
that.
also an element that we can bring into this. But this is the good part about Japanese literature. It is very slice of life. It shows that humans are not like so action based. Sometimes they just meander in life. Sometimes they're just moving around in life and concrete things are not happening to them outwardly all the time. Rather, things are building up inside, and that is driving their perspective. That is possibly driving their narration. And it is, in a way, confusing the reader, but also making the reader think more. And I think the abstraction that Japanese literature brings is the true reflection of how uncertain life is. That there is no one truth, that there is no one conclusion. that there are multiple explanations, justifications, possibilities, events that we just can't comprehend in that. And I think you need to a person needs to get into the groove of this style of writing which comes with Japanese literature, and it leaves so much abstraction in your mind that you can like really philosophize as to what this ambiguous, unclear ending really meant.
Totally. I really like your take on it. I think that because we found that like not a lot of people have read this book. I mean, I think it was popular back in the day, but
Yeah.
back in Japan, it was a big. But you should like steal the concept and then like with your twist, you could set it. You could set it in India. You could set it like anywhere. Honestly, you could set it like yeah, pretty much anywhere if you wanted to. And so just kind of steal this and then get a get a movie deal. Oh, I was gonna say real quick, you were saying how like you had a hard time, you were scared reading this. To get in the mood, especially when I was reading this, when I'm by myself, I was on my tablet and I also have YouTube on there. So I would put in my earbuds and I would go to YouTube and pull up one of those spooky ASMR. So I was listening to like Haunted Library. I was listening to Rainy Thunder, like haunted, whatever, while I'm reading this, while I'm by myself. Cause I don't know, it really like got me into it even more, you know? So highly recommend doing that when you're reading scary books, is listening to scary things on YouTube. Oh my gosh. Well, so casting, I had a bit of a hard time because I have to say I don't watch a lot of like straight up Japanese films, but I googled some current popular actors and actresses, and forgive me if I mispronounce their names. I didn't cast the whole thing, but I feel like the people most crucial to the story. Oh, and not the little girl. I didn't cast the little girl. We'll get some random cute little Japanese girl for that. But there's an actress. She's actually American Japanese. She had a really cool look. Her name is Kiko Mizuhara. She's an American Japanese model and actress. And she can do like high fashion, but then she can just do like everyday kind of woman looks, you know? She's very striking, but not overly so. Because you don't want, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
as Misao, as our main character.
He could be very plain looking as like a housewife. I think Kiko can be made to look very like a plain Jane, like concerned with household, domestic
Yeah.
duties,
But I
a
don't think Misao was
sad
too
wife.
plain because I think back in when she got her guy I think she was a city girl and dressed up and looked cute, but then, now it's like she doesn't have to anymore. So I think you need an actress that can do both. Like, look good. Not that doesn't have to be supermodel looks, but can look
Yeah.
good and then it can also pull
Like
off like
someone who
tired
can hold the
housewife.
corporate look.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And then
think
for
I think Kiko can hold that corporate, like if you dress her up in like a pencil skirt and a blazer, like someone who is like really into the professional grind. But if you strip all of that away, she could look like a real plain housewife.
yeah, exactly. And then for Taipei, I found this guy.
For Tepe, we need
He's
like
the right
no for
He's the
for
right age, but
Tepe
he's
we
been in a
need like
lot of
someone who
stuff.
looks like an asshole.
Well, I
Sorry.
got Kento, Kento Yamazaki. He's a Japanese actor and
Kento
model.
Yamazaki.
He has been in like a ton of stuff, a ton of manga adaptations and a ton of like drama movies over there.
Yeah.
I think he could pull off like asshole, but he's got to be a little bit good looking, a little bit. I mean, this guy's cute, but he's cute, but he's not like too cute. You know what I mean? You don't want too cute. Plus, I think a lot of these photos on Google, I think they're
I think he
younger
could
him.
also. Yeah. No, I think this actor Kento, like imagine if Tepe was actually possessed. He has that haunting look to his face. He could
Mm-hmm.
look like he's possessed and actually scared of ghosts. He has
Yeah,
that like, I don't know, that piercing stare.
exactly. He does. That's what got me because it was a piercing stare. This is the guy I think should play his brother, Keita Makita. Keitamachida. I think he could play the brother
Yeah.
because the brother's like, a little like thinks he's hot. He's a little bit of a jerk, and
Thinks he's a
he
hot
seems to be
shot.
like a little more. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's outgoing. A little. I think he's more outgoing. He's a couple years younger than Taipei, so he could
And he has a
play.
preppy look as well, this actor.
Yes,
Like a very
yeah.
show offy, preppy. I'm so successful, but I'm actually a jerk. That kind of a
Yes.
look.
And then for his wife, Naomi, she was a trip. So Naomi is going to be Nana Komatsu. She has a Naomi look. Like when I saw this actress, I was like, Naomi, where she's like a little bit stuck up and
Oh,
really into fashion. Like
yeah.
she's wearing Gucci to help them move their apartment, right?
Yes.
And then for the
And she
neighbor,
looks so critical and judgy. I love that.
yeah. And then for the neighbor that she befriends with the little girl, and I'm terrible. I just literally read the book right before this, and the what's her name? The neighbor that's one floor down that has the other two kids. I don't know. We'll put it in the thing.
One
They're all
second.
we're so terrible.
I've forgotten everyone's
Uh,
names as well.
I'll put her. So for her, Maki Horikita, I think should play the neighbor. She's very bubbly and kind of like bouncy and all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
She could play the neighbor.
She looks like the girl next door.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cute.
Literally the
Very
girl
like,
next door.
and then I did cast the former wife, and this woman is very striking, but seems very serene and reserved, like she was described. Because if I cast it, I of course because they're gonna have like flashbacks, right? If we're doing this live action, I still think it should be done as like an anime. But I think also in our version, I think that she should like appear later on, as a spirit,
Yeah.
either against them or for them. And she is Keiko Kitagawa. I think she should play the deceased wife. And she's apparently like pretty famous.
Yeah. She also has this haunting look to her face. I don't know how to explain
Mm.
it.
Now, here's the thing before we go into the astrology. Earlier, when I was looking something up while we were talking, I was looking up, that was a reminder for the character names. I'm so bad. And an IMDb link came up, and I was like, was this already? Because I was wondering, like, has this been made into a movie? We just haven't seen it. It's only in Japan. Get this. I click on it, and it has the writer, the director, some others. It doesn't have any cast. It's in production. They are making this film as we speak. They haven't put the cast yet. So here's the it's gonna be live action. I
Oh
mean,
my
I
god.
believe so. Get this. So the writer, there's two writers. The writer is also, I think, the director. I have to look this up again. One of the writers is this British guy, and he's done like all these different, let's see, he's done all these different horror films. He has like produced and written Paul Harris Boardman. Let me pull it up real quick. So he has done Deliver Us from Evil, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Exorcism of Emily Rose, The Devil's Knot. So he's done some like, pretty big
These are
stuff.
famous movies.
Archive 81, which is on Netflix. It's really good. It's really creepy. So he and this Japanese guy who is Takashi Shimizu. Now, Takashi Shimizu did, I think, writer and director or writer producer of The Grudge in Japanese and The Grudge in the United States. He's done like these super horror. He's done this Forest Village. I haven't seen it, but it's over there. But he's done some like Japanese to American remakes of these like famous Japanese horror. So he's got all of his stuff is like
Woohoo!
horror, terror. And so they're the ones that are going to be doing the Graveyard Apartment. And I think that is so cool. So they have,
I think
and
they'll do a
Takashi
great
Shimizu is
job.
the director, director and writer. And then the co-writer is the guy that did like Exorcism of Emily Rose. And it says it's going to be a horror mystery. So I am very excited. And I'm hoping, since it has both of them, and so the director writer who's Japanese, he's done like English versions of some of them, but Paul Harris does only, he's English, he's British, but he's only done, English language films. I'm hoping that they make this an English language, or at least maybe make both, make it a Japanese version and then and not that they have to be white people, but because to get American, I mean, I'll watch it. I love subtitles. I love foreign films. I watch subtitles on everything. Actually, I don't need to see like Americans playing the people. But yeah, it's going to be a movie, which is so cool. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do with it and to see if they take any of what you said and put that into play.
My pointers.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, what did you think of the book overall? What would you rate it? What would you recommend people? I guess people read it, not read it.
I think people should read it. And I think people should read it because people should just in general get into translated works. Like, you know what? Broaden your horizons. expand your mind, understand how language works, or how also understand how language can bring us closer, but also how much blocks it creates and how much miscommunication and mistranslation that it can cause. So just like by being interested in languages or being curious about languages, it's a good thing to start with translated works so that a lot of cultural nuances, some concepts which like wouldn't even enter, say an English or a Hindi speaking person's mind. You never know where it can take you. And Southeast Asian literature is brilliant. Like it's a world of its own. So this is a very good book to like dip your toe in. It's not too big, it's not too short. It will keep you engaged. And but yeah, I will say with everything Asian, just have some patience because we have like a lot of patience. So have patience with the literature. Immerse yourself in it. So I'll give it like a 3.8 out of 5. I'm
Yeah,
taking
that's not
away
bad.
point 2. I'm taking away point 2 just because it scared me. And I'm taking away I'm taking away one. Actually, I think I shouldn't be taking away that 1 point because okay, I'm taking away 1 point because I thought I'll only have to deal with the horrors of the other world. But I had to deal with the horrors of capitalism, patriarchy, feminism, household burdens, inequality,
Relationship issues. Yeah.
capitalism. That's it. I'm done. It
Yeah.
was too
Yeah.
horrifying.
Well, funny enough, and we don't read reviews, but I glance at them when I choose books, and this didn't turn me off of it, but I think on Amazon and Goodreads it has a 3.8 or a 3 point something. It's like very mid. It's not it's like just
Oh,
above mid range. Yeah, it's got and I think because a lot of Americans or mostly Americans rate on there, and I think it's the same thing. I don't think that they understood, how it was going to flow. And then I read a Reddit post and someone's like, I DNF'd it at page 121. It was so, boring and it was just too emo, whatever. But then reading the comments, other people are like, no, give it a chance. Like it,
yeah.
appreciate it for what it is. It gets better. And I will say, because I got into it and I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry I made you read this. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just like, again, I wasn't expecting to get into like the trauma and this and their issues. I was like, just give me a paranormal horror for the October. I thought it was going to be, I thought like, oh, The Ring or The Grudge, but it's worth it, especially the last third. Do you have any books you're reading? Anything you want to like recommend, talk about?
I would like to like recommend and stuff, but the thing is, the book that I've read, not read, kind of reading, I want to like maybe have it as my birthday month book. But have I been reading anything else? No, I was so like absorbed by this book, and this book made me consume so much other media to be able to like sustain reading this book and not being damaged by it. That I think within the space of the our last episode and this episode, yeah, I have not read. I think I've not
Yeah.
read anything besides this book, and I read
Yeah.
it
I
in like
have,
very
mhm,
specific chunks, and I had to like palate cleanse a lot because again, this book is about horrors beyond otherworld, beyond the other world. Like when some realistic was like hitting the book, I was like, oh my god.
yeah, too real.
Yeah,
Too
so
real.
yeah, this and this is the thing with Japanese literature and how I respond to it. I'm unable to like read other books while I'm reading uh, a Japanese literature book. I don't know why it just sucks me into that world, and until I'm done living in that world, I'm not able to see like outside of it. Yeah, it consumes me. I think the oppressive world that it's able to create, in a way, it kind of like oppressed me as well when it came to my reading life because it just sucked me in. And as much as
Yeah.
I was terrified of it, I was not able to like fully come out of the atmosphere until I finished the book. And like I was doing rational things like making an outline and all of that. I was not able to like come out of that atmosphere. But I would
Yeah.
recommend certain Japanese literature book. The first One is The Woman in the Dune by Kobo Abe. This is even more abstract than what The Graveyard Apartment could ever be considered. It is, again, atmospheric, weird AF. It has like horror plus surrealism. So there's a lot of unreliable narration. You don't know who is exactly going through what to say certain dialogues for certain events to happen. It's a creepy AF book. And I did not realize that this book was considered horror because I read it like way back when I would not check Goodreads all that often. So definitely his book. And I will say, yeah, to all our viewers, please don't read Haruki Murakami. There are other Japanese authors who are way better than him. You can read one or two works of Haruki Murakami, but nothing beyond two works because he portrays women in a very misogynistic way. And I get it. He's 80 years old. He's a boomer. He probably doesn't know better. But I'm sorry. Like, if you have a writing career of 30 years, like, you have to come out of portraying women as placeholders for the male protagonist's plot. And after reading 3 or 4 books of Haruki Murakami, I was like, bro, you have the same formula. The girl is like a weird, all the women in his book are just like these weird air in the head, like detached from reality, doing weird things, abstract things, disappearing somewhere. And all the shit is happening to the woman. Why? Because the man has to do something with his life. Yeah. So you, 1 or 2 books, it's okay. But other than that, do not like indulge with this author more. And it's really come out in the book community. It has like been noticed, and he has been questioned as to why he portrays women as objects. Like, even the way his male protagonists think about women in their head, it's like it's so appearance based, so based on what they can do for the male protagonist. And that's why they are loved, because of what they can do, not because of what they are. Yeah, 1 or 2 works, nothing more than that.
In terms of what I've been reading, I have been reading about licensing for almost the past
Yes.
month. That is what I have been eating, sleeping, breathing. And I only started this book a couple days ago and I literally finished it right before we start recording. But I always have, because I need to like brain bleach. I always have an audiobook on deck. So the only thing that I read otherwise or listened to, one of my favorite authors, Mira Grant, Mira Grant. It's called In the Shadow of Spindrift House. And it's about these 4 friends since childhood, and they're almost like Scooby-Doo, you know what I mean? But this is not a comedy, and they're not teenagers anymore, and so they realize they got to pay for their own insurance. They need money. They need to figure out where they're going to college, and so they take one last job together. This creepy house that they have to be locked in, and they have to, because the people in the town want to know who is actually the original owner of this abandoned house, because it's that and the land is worth tons of money, and so they volunteer for a great sum of money to be locked in the home, and they're not allowed out until they find the deed that's hidden somewhere in the home. But there's all these like weird secrets and twists. And Mira Grant, it's the pen name of Shannon Maguire, but she writes tons of like horror and science fiction. She's also written under Mira Grant one of my all-time favorite books, Into the Drowning Deep, one about the people that go and find the real mermaids and are basically obliterated by said mermaids. So that's what I read, horror, stuff like that. But In the Shadow of Spindrift House, easy read. It's 197 pages, or really easy listen. The audiobook was like 3.5 hours. And it's the audiobook wasn't that scary. It's not. I've read worse, and not really gore or anything, but very freaky. What reminded me to bring it up was you saying how in this book we don't know actually the timeline of events. And in the Shadow of Spindrift House, how she writes it took me a while to figure it out, because they'll say the chapter numbers at the beginning. The chapter numbers were all different. Like she'd be like
Oh.
2, and then she'd say again 2, and then be 9, and that's like you don't really notice it till later on. And so at the end, I'm like, wait a second, I don't know what came when. And so I kind of want to read it as a physical book now. So very easy read and not too scary. Honestly, I part of me was like, oh man, I should have picked this instead. But again, we were going for like non-American. But yeah, so you don't have to, but if you want to, Did we pick November? Are we teasing November? I forgot. Do you want to tease
Oh,
November?
we are finally going to do something light for November. That is
Yes,
the vibe.
yes, actually light. Like we don't
Because
have to
we are
analyze. We don't have to
becoming
dig too deep.
academics with this
I
podcast.
know.
Yeah,
I
we are
know.
becoming scholars. We are becoming academics. We need to around a little bit.
I feel like each
Like
one we read. I mean, go ahead.
I think after like the first or the second book, we started becoming scholars.
Like each book we read, especially the last one, and this one, I if I had more time, I would have done way more research. But I feel like it's like writing a thesis for like a graduate program. You know what I mean? Like and how much we go in, and even like I
Yeah.
said, I'm still pumping out content for our September episode. I'm a little behind, but I have so much of it that I need to put it out in October because that's how much research we did, and I don't want to delete it. I want the world to see it, even if it's like 3 of you or, 5,000 of you. Somebody eventually will come upon our channel. Anyway, thank you all for listening and watching and all of your support. And yeah, do you have anything else you want to add?
I think the only thing to add is that we should be on top of our mission to read the silliest book possible for November. Yeah.
I
We
agree.
need
I love
to
it.
become stupider. We become too smart for this world.
Yes, I love it. We need to go back to a much lighter, more, free time in our lives, I think. Anyway, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming again, and we'll see you guys next month. Check out our extra content on our page as well.